And this is a Texas Longhorns team that has not lived up to expectations whatsoever. Preseason number 1 team in the country, currently on the year 5-2, with that's 5-2 with games against Georgia and Texas A&M left, as well as number 10 Vanderbilt still on the schedule. Which, I mean, Arkansas, God, they could lose to the Hogs. They could potentially lose to Mississippi State. Texas has not at all met up to the hype, and the starting point for that is that Texas offensively is awful. On the season overall, averaging 26.7 points per game. But if you were to put that down to just Power 5 competitions, that's under 17 points a game for Texas if you take away their blowout wins over the Sam Houstons and San Jose States of the world. It starts that Arch Manning has not been good to this point. The prodigal son, prodigal son doesn't work, the chosen one, rather, overall in the season, 207 yards per game, 60% completions, 7.7 per attempt, 12 touchdowns to 5 picks. He's also rushed for 5 touchdowns. Those aren't like the worst stats you've ever seen, but when you break it down to plays against Power 5 teams, 189 yards a game, 57.8% completions, 6.5 per attempt, 4 touchdowns to 3 picks. Suddenly the numbers get a lot worse. And look, I would say 2 of Texas's last 3 games, he's been okay. Against Florida, he was not the issue in that game. He actually made some really nice throws against the Gators. Against Oklahoma, he had some nice plays as well. Oklahoma leaned on the run game more. Against Texas leaned on the run game more in that win. But Arch made some nice throws. He started to progress a little bit. He looked awful again against Kentucky. There were rough decisions. But again, he was under pressure in the game. And that's part of it is why it cannot all be put on Arch is that the pieces around him have not been there. And it starts, the run game is terrible. They are averaging less than 150 yards per game. And again, breaking it down versus Power 5 versus non, it's just 100 yards per game against Power 5 teams. Power 5 games, 100 yards per game, 3.2 per carry, 2 touchdowns scored on the ground in those games. They have not been able to run the football effectively. Weirdly ran it okay against Ohio State and against Oklahoma, but against Florida, terrible day against Kentucky. Sacks play a big role in that, but look, they don't have a running back who's been productive. Quinn Weiser, after a 1,000-yard season this year, he's only played 4 games, but 222 yards in the season for him, about 3.8 per carry. Jarrett Gibson, who I don't think played in the last game, he did not. He's missed 2 of the last 3. Not been able to get a lot out of him. Arch has frankly had to do a lot on the ground. Some of Texas's better offensive moments have come with Arch scrambling and using his legs. He does lead the team, like I said, with 5 rushing touchdowns, but they've not been able to find a consistent run game, and it's because their offensive line is terrible. They lost 4 of their starters from that line a season ago, and any assumption of them being able to replace that has been off base. They can't block up front. I will say pass protection against Ohio State and Oklahoma wasn't terrible. I mean, they only gave up 2 sacks total over those 2 games. They got 6 sacks to Florida, 3 sacks to Kentucky. So in 2 of their last 3 outings, they have been really, really bad in how they performed. And I don't have the tackle for loss allowed, but they're one of the worst teams in the SEC in terms of tackles for loss allowed. There's thought to be talent in the receiving core between guys like Ryan Wingo, Parker Livingstone, DeAndre Moore, Jack Andrews at tight end. None of those guys have really jumped off the page to this point. They've all kind of had their individual moments of a good game, but they don't have a true number one, I can go to this guy and he's going to be open type receiver. There's just not a lot. A lot of the talent that was expected to be around Arch is not there between the offensive line and the skill players. I know Sark is under heat for the play calling right now and how that's been. But Archer Manning has also just not delivered the way they wanted to. Texas offensively is in a bad place, and you have to think Mississippi State playing at home with their defense being what it's been to this point should be able to have some success in limiting what Texas can do.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game. I mean, the protection up front you mentioned for Arch Manning has not been the best this year. It's actually been pretty bad. He's taken 13 sacks. He's thrown 5 picks, 12 passing touchdowns. He has just, like, the one thing I'll say about, 12 passing touchdowns is still double digits. Yeah, but it's Arch freaking Manning. I mean, this guy was supposed to be, like, winning 600 national titles, and he was going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer and win 5 Heismans in a row and, all this hype. That's the issue. He has not lived up to what Texas fans have made him out to be, what recruits, what scouts, what all. Like, is he the worst of the worst? No, but he's not what he's not living up to his name either. You talk about Peyton and Eli, um, and maybe that was part of the issue. Maybe he just got compared to his uncles so much. I don't know what the issue was. Now, to Texas as a team, they I don't want to say that they're not a good team, but they're definitely not what we thought they would be as a whole this year. They're sitting at 5-2. If they win out, they'll have 10 wins. They might find a shot to get 10 wins, make the playoffs or something. But let's just call it what it is. That's probably not going to happen. And it's not all because of the offense and Arch. I think it goes both ways. The defense isn't perfect, but it's something. I like that Michael
The defense has had
Tayafi.
one game, one
Right,
poor game against Florida. Other than that, the defense
right.
has been pretty awesome.
Yeah. Malik Muhammad leads in interceptions at 2. Michael Tayafi, or I
Tav,
don't even know how you say that. Taff.
yeah, he's a
Well,
safety.
51. Yeah. Well, yeah. He leads the team in tackles at 51. The defense has guys. You got Anthony Hill's one of the big go-to guys.
One of
He's
the
got
top
a pick.
linebackers in the country.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's just one of those odd years for college football as a whole, but it's really weird for Texas, man, because you got an offensive head coach in Sarkeesian, and I love Sarkeesian. I think a lot of people love what he's done at Texas so far. It's great to see them back on track. Not this year. And say all that to turn the page back over to Mississippi State. I know we spent a lot of time talking about Jeff Lebby, his job security and stuff. But if you're going to get an SEC win, it being at home against the team, especially if you could like just take advantage of a I want to say depleted offense, but that's probably a little bit too much. I don't know. Just take advantage of some opportunities defensively if you're Mississippi State and just see Texas for who they are. A bunch of frauds. You know, they're frauds. They have not lived up to really any standards that we put on them this year. And I think that's being as honest as possible.
Yeah, no, they've not been particularly good. I do want to go back to the Texas defense a little bit. I mean, look, that group has been really good. The Florida game, they gave up
Yeah.
some yards and some points, but against Power 5 teams on the season, they're only giving up 15 and a half points per game. If you look at yards allowed in those games against Power 5 competition, 328 per game at just 4.8 yards per play. Um, they're good in the red zone defensively. They're solid on third down. They've forced a lot of turnovers to this point, and it's all three levels of the defense. We talked about the linebacker and Anthony Hill, Michael Taft and Malik Muhammad. That's as good of a duo in the secondary as you're going to get, as Chris kind of talking about there. Defensive front, when you talk about edge rushers, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Brad Spence, as good as you're going to get in the country. And that is incredibly concerning when you talk about Mississippi State. All the problems they have dealing with pass rush, this is going to be a rough game, I have to think, for State defense. Unless State changes things and figures something out, I'm going to have a hard time seeing State protecting Blake Shapen, Kamaru Taylor, whoever's in against that Texas pass rush. We've not seen State's offensive line be able to handle teams that can provide that pressure to this point. That's going to be a big challenge. I mean, on the season, it's kind of like for teams that have been able to beat Texas, like what did they do well? And it's like Ohio State only had 200 yards. Florida had the one big day. Kentucky was able to throw it on them a little bit. I will say, like, those two teams between Florida and Kentucky were able to throw the football a little bit. Florida found some success on the ground. Kentucky, I mean, found a little bit. And I will say the two teams that have run for over 100 yards against the Longhorns have been able to find some sort of success offensively, at least in terms of moving the ball. Texas, I think, does have some questions along the defensive interior. Their edge rushers are great, but they lost a lot along the interior. Have they really replaced that adequately? We'll find out. Maybe that's something if you're State, you think you can kind of run it up the gut on them a little bit. And look, Florida was able to push the ball down the field. That's what they were able to do against the Texas offense. And Florida had big games in the big plays through the pass game. Like that was a big key for Florida in being able to beat Texas. Maybe you think you can replicate that a little bit, but again, Texas secondary is really good. And with that pass rush, how well are you going to be able to withstand it? That's a big question. So, I mean, this is a massive, massive test. I don't have any confidence in the State offense. I do have pretty good confidence in the State defense. Now, I'll say this. If this is a game where State, once again, is not able to get pressure defensively, that's going to become a little bit more of a concern because I thought Florida was a team that could get some pass rush against. And they got pressure. They didn't get home. They got a couple sacks officially, one on a blitz and then one on Brian Lanier making a really good read on a play on a rollout. But when it just came to State just rushing normally, they would get some pressure and then they could not get DJ Lagway, who is not fully healthy and is not that dynamic of a runner right now to the ground. If you let Arch run a little bit, Texas's offense can figure some things out. Like that's kind of been a saving grace for them is Arch's legs. So I think State's got to be able to get pressure. They got to be able to get Arch to the ground. Don't let their run game get going. I think it kind of has to be put on the arm of Arch Manning at this point. Like it's got to be Arch beats you with his arm. And he has some ability to do that, but if he's doing it under pressure, he makes bad decisions, and that's where you're able to get him stopped. Look, man, this is a game Mississippi State could win. Like when Texas you get outgained against Kentucky like they did, and is lucky that they even got to get that game into overtime, and lucky to get the win. Yeah, like you could beat Texas, but you have got to figure something out offensively. I think State's defense is going to limit Texas enough to give them a chance. Your offense has got to have its best game of the year. You cannot make mistakes. You cannot be turning the football over. You cannot have negative plays. Like this has got to be clean football. This has got to be executing at a high level because otherwise I don't think you're going to be able to put any points on the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, we just got through talking about how you kind of trust the defense of Texas more than the offense right now, which is so weird to say, man. I know we're talking about a Sarkisian team.
Talking about a Levy team.
There's going to be a lot of push.
Hold on, not to cut you off.
Yeah.
It's the same way for both sides. This is Steve Sarkisian versus Jeff Levy, and in both cases, the defenses to this point have been significantly better than the offenses. And that is not something that would have made any sense a couple years ago when these guys were both in the Big 12 tearing it up.
True. I agree. So, with that being said, I say that to say that the tables have kind of turned a little bit. And now it's up to these defenses to perform the way that they have this year. You got to get pressure and get after the quarterback. You got to play the good man coverage. You got to get off the field on third down. You have to do all of that if you're Mississippi State. And I would say the same thing for Texas. And I think you got to believe in what they can do. This will probably be a fun game to watch. But at the same time, if you're Mississippi State, and even if you're Texas, this might be a nail biter.
Texas is a 7.5-point favorite over State. Mm-hmm. I can see that. The over-under is 45.5, which would mean that if you do the math on it, because I just did it on my phone, if you were to relate the point spread to the total, we are looking at a score of let me do it again because I just lost it. Like somewhere around like 26-19 is your score here.
Yeah.
If the total and the line matches up. Do you trust Texas to score 26 points on the road?
I don't know.
Do you trust Mississippi State to score 19 on Texas even at home? I bet personally, And I'm
Yeah.
not going to give out gambling advice because I'm sure if I did, all those picks would be wrong. I will say on the SEC show on our quick picks, I went 3-0 on the week, so shout out to me. I don't know how my picks against the spread were on those other games. I don't remember, but the quick picks, I went 3-0. I would take the under. I do not see more than 45.5 points scored total between these teams. This game feels like final score. Maybe Texas could hit 20. Like, I don't know, 20-10, 20-13, something
It's
like
like
that.
a 21-14. If you're getting a small shootout and you just see touchdowns, first one to get 3 wins the game, you know?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a low-scoring, ugly game.
Yeah.